And we got recording started. Thank you. Okay, let's get started. A call to order this meeting of the Anchorage Assembly Public Safety Committee. It is May 3rd at 11 a.m. Would you call roll, please?
Miss Brawley,
Here.
Miss Bronga,
Here.
Mr. Constant, Mr. Cross,
Here.
Mr. Johnson,
Here.
Mr. Martinez,
Present.
Mr. Myers,
Here.
Mr. Perez Verdia,
Here.
Mr. Rivera,
Present.
Mr. Salt,
Here.
Mr. Voland,
Happy to be here.
Miss Alatel.
Thank you. And Mr. Salt, if you want to get in the queue, please just text me and I'll make sure you get in. Thank you for being here, everyone. We have a pretty long agenda today, so we'll try to be as efficient as we can in terms of the use of our time. Let's just jump right in and have APD start. You've got a couple of items on there. Captain Curl.
Good morning through the chair, Chief Mike Curl.
Oh, sorry, Captain.
That's
Chief, sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
I demoted you on accident. Sorry,
I like
sir.
to reminisce at times anyway. So the first one's the body camera update. So the body camera update, I gave a press conference a couple weeks ago and basically spelled out what the timeline without specific dates are going to be. Right now, we've selected a vendor. We're in active contract negotiations with the vendor. They've actually sent over the initial contract, which we're reviewing. And once the contract is signed and we start getting body cameras delivered and officers trained, the officers, the current policy, which is on our website, if you want to go on there and look, is the one we will be mandating the officers abide by. And arbitration is going to go forward still in October. With the guidance of legal counsel, we're told that implementation and the arbitration are two distinct and separate items. With that, I decided to push forward with the implementation as soon as we have cameras available to us. So once the contract negotiations are done, we have equipment, my officers train, they'll hit the street with the body cameras. Any questions about body cameras?
Mr. Rivera.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So perhaps we can get to this once the law department comes up. I did have a question for them about what made legal change its position on it. I don't know if there's anyone from law here who can speak to that. I don't know.
My understanding is they'll be a little bit late, but be here by 11:30.
Okay, well then I'll hold that question. So then,
And that's going to be the criminal department. The civil department won't be here.
Right, correct.
So basically, the press have asked about that, and they're going to say it's a attorney-client privilege, and they probably won't release that information.
yeah, I figured that would be the canned response. I, for myself, would like to know what changed in terms of that legal position. And then I guess my question is, has the union responded to any of the recent developments? And if so, what has been their response?
So we do have the policy, and like all my policies, I have hundreds of policies. They're all living documents. The one that's on the website now, chances are, will not be the exact same policy that is actually implemented once I do get body cameras on the street, because we change them all the time. But I can tell you that the behind the scenes negotiation with the union has increased quite a bit. They want to get the policy in effect before the body cameras actually come here. So there's been a lot of movement. Other than that, Sean, you got anything you want to add to that?
Met with them 3 times last week. So still trying to come to a mutual agreement on a policy that they're happy with. We're pretty solid on the elements that are in the policy online. I think that policy, for those of you who haven't read that, I encourage you to read that. Reflect a lot of the concerns that this body has had, as well as the public. I think we addressed a lot of those. And I think it's a good policy for this community and what it wants.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Voland.
Thank you. Yeah, I do have a few questions. So the intent is to go through the arbitration process still in the fall, but it sounds like you're already meeting with the union to discuss what you're going to be doing in the interim, or is there?
If we can come to a consensus before arbitration, then arbitration, there will be no need to
Would
go
be
to
moot.
arbitration.
Okay.
But right now, there's a couple, one major sticking point that we disagree with, and we're going to hold true. We've made a lot of concessions already from what we originally wanted. And there's some things that we just can't make concessions for, and we won't.
Thank you. Can I follow up? Is a sticking point still the reporting requirement, clean reporting versus watching the footage back first?
Not the reporting, it's the actual pre-interview viewing of the
Right.
footage.
Okay, thank you for that. So I think, it leads me to a concern. Number one, well, I wonder, so you said it'd be a living document policy. In June of 2020, before I was elected to the Anchorage Assembly, I emailed the Anchorage Assembly because former Chief Dahl did a press conference with Ethan Berkowitz, who was mayor at the time, and they talked about how they were going to be banning chokeholds due to public concern in the wake of George Floyd. But in that same press conference, they said, our policy and procedures manual is a living document. It could be changed daily, weekly or even daily. And so then the question becomes, well, if we ban chokeholds today, what's to prevent them from being unbanned tomorrow? So anytime I hear it's a living document policy that can be changed, it gives me a little concern. I guess my assumption would be that if a policy is formally adopted, then it would no longer be a living document that could be changed. There would have to be a sort of a renegotiation of that process.
So they're policies and procedures.
Mm-hmm.
So, things change, laws change. There's a lot of things that happen. So there's nothing that is just locked in stone. The only thing, if there's for instance, if there are with our drone policy, a lot of our drone policies, because it is in ordinance, it's municipal ordinance, and a lot of that, there's things in there that there's items in there we could never change because it is a municipal ordinance. But other thing, it's the internal workings of the police department. It's how we conduct business. So every document can change. There'll never be a time where this document is locked in stone. There could be little tweaks to it.
If I could just follow up one more time briefly, Chair. Thank you. So I guess my question would be, if there's a sticking point that for you is a non-negotiable. So I have a question to APD and then also to our Assembly Council, kind of back to back here. Number one, what would be your position on the Assembly codifying reporting process that you could not watch footage back before either having your initial interview or making your initial report? But potentially you could do a supplementary interview or supplementary report after watching the footage. So I guess that would be my question of APD. And then my question of Assembly Council is, where are we on this? Because I think there was a request of a couple members to research this, whether or not that particular piece would be something that was a subject of mandatory bargaining. Is something being drafted? Where are we on the process of codifying or researching what could be put into code? So I guess that's you guys first.
Dean, you want to?
What would be your position?
I'm always against codifying anything in my policies. I don't think we need to get to that point. I don't think the Assembly needs to get down to the business of codifying stuff in policies. But whatever you put in code, obviously our policies will have to reflect that. So hopefully our policies are based on best practices and laws, of course. And if anything is codified, I sure hope that you would take into account what the public safety professionals actually have to say before just codifying something.
Okay, thanks. And then I guess for Dean, that question of where are we in that process?
Yes, thank you. Well, I would first say that legislating for, I guess, police procedures, use of force, and the tools they have at their disposal is often very sticky to get into. And you have to consider unintended consequences, and some of that might be on personnel and workforce and the police and public safety workforce. But that said, I think that we have had some inquiries about codifying a process, but we don't have an actual draft for you at this point. And I guess that would be something that some individual members have asked about. And so we've researched some. I think codifying, I guess, certain parts of the process is certainly feasible and something for the legislators here to decide. And so I can see there's much interest in doing so. I've had this on my queue to get you further and try to produce something. But I also know that the law department has looked into this and worked on it. So if I guess Mr. Volland, your request is to get something written and drafted for you to look at, we can certainly move that along.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I will, and one thing, all our policies before we actually publish the final draft, they all go through the municipal legal department as well.
Thank you. I want to just verify for the record a few things that you've said, just to make sure I think we're all on the same page. And so my understanding is that first, you are moving forward with implementing body cameras with the existing policy. Is that correct?
The one that's on our website now.
Great. Okay. And then you said you had in your press conference shared a timeline. Can you just share that with us? Is that when will we, based on your timeline right now, see body cameras on the street?
As soon as the contract is finalized, the equipment is delivered, and my officers are trained.
Can you give us a sense of that?
Anyone who's involved in contract negotiations, and the one thing you have to understand, this is not just for body cameras. This is for our digital evidence management system. This is in-car video. This is for body cameras. This is for our interview rooms as well. This is so that all our digital evidence can be tied together. We'll tie with our phones. We'll tie with everything so that all our evidence can be managed efficiently and effectively. So it's more than just body cam. It's a bigger thing. So the contract, if anyone's been involved, this is going to be an extensive contract. Once the contract is done, getting the equipment delivered and then training, that's the easy part. So,
Chief, I appreciate that. I'm reflecting on the fact that I think there's a level of exhaustion from the community and from many of us who've been working on this for 2 years, and it's helpful to have a sense of when it's going to happen. And so you may not be able to deliver that today, but as soon as you can give us an estimate, a date, something that we can sort of go back out to the public and say we're sure we're going to get body cameras out on the street by this date, because it's been pushed and pushed and pushed. So I want to share that I understand process, but I think all of the members are receiving an incredible amount of feedback from the community of frustration and anger about how long this is taking. So the more we can give them clear dates and clear sense of when it's going to happen, the better. So the other thing, I guess, when you do put them out on the street, is it your intention to start with a small amount and test them like the troopers have reportedly doing? Is that your intention, is to start with a smaller amount?
yes.
And then before you equip all?
So my initial intent, I'll put 30 cameras on the street at first.
Okay.
And make sure, and I think when legal comes up and gives their assessment of how it's going to impact them, they're going to need to know that the migration of data can happen.
Right. Just a couple other things. So at this point, our arbitration is still planned, but it sounds like there's active conversations with the union at this point. And it's my understanding, based on what you said, is that if there is a resolution prior to the arbitration, then there will not be arbitration. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And is it your intent to attempt to try to resolve this as soon as you can?
Arbitration costs money, and we will be negotiating up until arbitration in an attempt to save money.
Okay.
And just the hassle of going through arbitration.
Thanks. Okay. Is any other questions? Yes, Mr. Martinez.
Thank you. First, I just wanted to say I agree that there's a difference between implementation and the deliberative process that you all are going through with respect to bargaining. Had a question about the vendor, and
So I can't talk about the vendor because we're in contract negotiations.
right on. So my question about the vendor is, are we negotiating permanent, or is this an initial contract, or are we talking about a multiple year contract? Are we at that level, considering that we're talking about rolling out 30 to test them? What kind of level of contract are we?
Yeah, this will be a
currently looking
multi-year contract.
at? Right on, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no additional questions, let's move on to the next. Oh, yes, sir. Mr. Johnson.
Just quick question to make sure that my assumption is correct here. So assuming that the cameras are initially deployed with the existing policy or something close to it, and then later on we go to arbitration, which changes that policy, any actions that are take place up until the date that this is resolved through arbitration would be guided by the initial policy? There's no retroactive or look back?
No look back whatsoever. So whatever the new date of the, if we have to make changes to it, which we do all the time now anyway, there's no looking back.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, let's move on to the next item. Thanks.
Okay, last meeting, Assemblymember Rivera asked to look at stolen vehicles. So we're going to look at a wide variety. We're going to awe you with some of these charts we have here and look back, especially if you look at 2018. So this is the first thing. This is just a year-to-date, 365 day-to-date. This is just to show you 2018 was one heck of a year for stolen vehicles. 2019 was a little bit better, and we've been getting better ever since. I'll get to 2023, where we have seen a slight uptick, and I'll get to that a little bit later. Any questions about this chart? Basically, it's just to show you how we've had a substantial decrease. And I'll cover why the decrease has happened a little bit later. Next page. It's just a linear graphic that basically just portrays what we just said in the other thing. And you can read the comments on the right-hand side. Basically, we use these we like to look at trends. We like to use data. Next page. It's just by month. And that's from 2022 up January 1st to now. You can see the pretty drastic decline. Next page. This tells you what kind of car you might think about buying. Yeah, basically these are the top 10 for the previous years, and then this year. We're going to get to the big push for this year. I think anyone who's watched the news or is on Instagram or TikTok, they've heard there's videos out there on how you can steal Hyundais and Kias. And we're not immune from that. And we did see a sharp increase in stolen vehicles, and they were Kias and Hyundais. So we recognize that. We used our graphs, our heat maps. We identified where these vehicles were being stolen. And you see the large increase, and then you saw the decrease in the bar graph, the linear graph, where from the middle of March down to May, it's been a steady decrease. That's because we identified the two groups that were stealing the Hyundais and Kias. Basically, we put a lot of exhaustive effort into it, identify them, took them into custody, and you could see by the graph before the sharp decline, we got them off the street and the vehicles went down. What we do, I'm not going to tell you what we actually do to deter the crime as far as investigation first, because I don't want the bad guys to know what we do. But we do link the police work with a public campaign. And we're always out there telling people, don't leave, don't go out there and start your car and just run back in the house and leave your keys in the car. Even if you lock your doors, people are going to break your windows. And we see a big increase in this in the wintertime, where people think, oh, I'll just run out and start my car because it's cold out there. Maybe even today because they saw the snow coming down. They started their cars up. So we try to do a public awareness campaigns with our public information office to tell people, don't start your cars and leave them running. Because a lot of these cars that are stolen they're crimes of opportunity, where people are walking by and it's like, hey, look at that car's running. If you can't invest in a remote start, just please don't start your cars. And that's what the message we try to get out. But to Felix, to your point, we did have a sharp increase in vehicle thefts, and it was a lot to do with the Kia Hyundai sensation, where frankly, it's really easy to steal those cars. I know Kia and Hyundai are looking to correct that problem. We addressed it with identifying 2 groups, and we arrested them, and we've seen a steady decline since then.
Thanks. A couple questions for you, Ms. Brawley.
Yeah, thanks for this information. If I'm remembering back a few years ago when there was the spike in vehicle thefts, can you comment on how, and you mentioned also it's a crime of opportunity often. Can you comment on how much of that prior year data is maybe more organized crime? Or if I'm remembering correctly, there was kind of a group doing it. Is that right? Or am I off base?
Yeah, there were several groups doing it. The one we had the big rash on it, and we had changed our techniques and got the prosecutors on board, the district attorney's office mainly, because when you steal a vehicle, it's a felony crime. So it has nothing to do with the municipal attorney's office. But they also were able to charge joyriding for people that are in the car, which is a municipal offense. So we basically formed a mini task force to deal with the severe rise in stolen vehicles. We have a system in place now that we continue to implement, and it's very effective in getting people who are attempting to commit crimes and committing crimes to prevent them from doing in the future by prosecuting and putting them in jail.
Yeah, thank you. And just a quick follow-up. Yeah, I appreciate that. And just to say, I know often there's a public perception that crime is happening everywhere all the time and, for all reasons, but I think it's helpful to understand that there are patterns and like you said, there's different kind of characteristics, or sometimes it can be attributed to specific individuals or groups. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cross.
Thank you to the chair. I'm curious as to what percentage of vehicles that are stolen are recovered, and then, or how many just disappear into the abyss, I'm very curious about the condition of vehicles. Just the other way. Once we recover a vehicle, we find somebody, what that looks like on the other side of it. Thank you.
So I don't have the number in front of me, but I will find out. I'll send you guys an email with that information. We do have a pretty good rate of recovering the vehicles. A lot of time, well, not a lot of times, very seldom are the vehicles actually burned or destroyed. If they're used in the commission of other serious crimes, that's when you'll see the burnt out house because they want to destroy all the evidence. But for the most part, they're crimes of opportunity, or, hey, I saw this on TikTok, let's try this. And usually they just leave them on the side of the road and we can recover them with it's a major inconvenience, but the actual damage done to the vehicles is not that much. But I'll get you solid numbers.
Thank you. And for the record, we are joined by Mr. Constant. A couple more questions, and I'd like to move on just to make sure we get through our agenda. Mr. Rivera, and then Mr. Johnson after you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick comment. I appreciate you putting all these slides together. I know this is something that for my constituents has been a concern. So now I'm able to communicate what exactly APD is doing about it. So I really appreciate your efforts. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
In terms of the stolen vehicle investigations, it sounds like you guys have had a lot of success lately. Is there a dedicated unit, or who handles that primarily?
It's our property crime section.
Thank you. Looks like no additional questions. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time and for your work. And we'll bring up Chief Schrage. All right, Chief, you've got the floor.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Chair Perez-Ferdia. Doug Schrage here, Anchorage Fire Chief. I'm joined, for the record, by Ben Lewis, who is our acting Chief of Emergency Medical Services for the fire department. And there are 2 topics on today's agenda for me to cover. So without any further ado, we'll just jump right into these 2 topics. First, given it's especially befitting to talk about wildfire preparations on a snowy day such as today, I wanted to give a briefing on our preparations for the coming wildfire season. So there is, as you can see here, there is the thinning and beetle kill tree removal work that is currently underway by Parks and Recreation. This will continue through May and into June. And in fact, they've been doing some of this work already. It's easier to do some fuel mitigation and removal on the frozen ground, especially in areas that are subject to becoming marshy a little bit later. We have been coordinating our efforts with the Bureau of Land Management to align our planned work, fuel mitigation work, in Campbell Tract in particular, and in the vicinity of Far North Bicentennial Park. It's obviously to our interest to align our efforts so that we don't have breaks in continuity in our fire breaks and other fuels management efforts. OEM has been working on developing for each of these sites board signage that they're putting in the vicinity so that they can inform hikers and recreators of the work that's undergoing. There's a QR code so that they can examine, they can get resources about specifically what's being done. And I'm told that there is some work that has been done on developing a dashboard that people can go to online and see a visualization of the work that's underway and planned. Some outreach activities are depicted here. First of all, a couple of weeks ago, OEM hosted a virtual hillside wildfire awareness workshop. This coming Saturday is the annual Community Firewise event. This is hosted by the Rabbit Creek Community Council, has strong participation from the Hillside Area Landowners group. Both organizations are very active in helping to prepare for and manage the wildfire season. And of course, we'll be there as well, providing information and outreach to people in the community. May 12th, OEM will be hosting an outreach day at Bear Valley Elementary. And there are probably other activities that Amanda can brief us on when she gets here. We have several funding initiatives that we've been following. The first is, I'm sad to report, we did not get a community wildfire defense grant to write our community's community wildfire protection plan. This plan was last updated in 2008 when the fire department closed the wildfire mitigation office. And so along with that, there have been no subsequent updates to our community wildfire protection plan, which is a required element, one of several required elements for receiving federal funding. So we have a plan B in mind for that, which I'll get to here in a moment. There is also, and by the way, no community wildfire defense grants were awarded to any entity in the state of Alaska. So we were big losers this year. We have in process a FEMA fuels mitigation and risk assessment grant. This is $1.2 million. FEMA has reached out to and asked for some information. So I know that they are considering our grant application, and I'm not sure what the time frame for us receiving that funding would be, but we are eagerly awaiting for it. And then thirdly, you may have heard we have recently applied for a $4 million distribution through the United States Forest Service. This is congressionally directed spending that was dedicated for the municipality of Anchorage, essentially to stand up our wildfire mitigation office, which, as I mentioned, was closed in 2008. So we have plans to resume the activities that have fallen by the wayside over the last, decade and a half or thereabouts. The money is dedicated to us. Applying for it through the U.S. Forest Service is a formality. My battery just died. Which is basically just something that we have to do to get access to that money. We have plans to spend some of that during this current wildfire season. So we are tracking our costs. We will be able to retroactively seek reimbursement from the grant once we get it. And then finally, in the topic of operations, just a few activities. We have renewed our annual operating plan with the Division of Forestry. As you may or may not know, our basic strategy within the municipality is to put as many resources on a emerging wildfire so that we can keep it small to buy us time until the Division of Forestry can assist us with aerial firefighting, wildfire fighting aircraft, and ground crews. And we've been successful with that, but there are multiple potential single points of failure, including the unavailability of DOF. If it's very likely that the resources we're relying on would be called out to a different fire and therefore unavailable to us. So we've met with JBEAR, their wildfire support module up at JBEAR. They've been very generous with their time in providing SAW training to our firefighters, and they have been providing some coordination level exercises with our commanders so that we can be well coordinated when the time comes to have a fire. We are continuing this year with conducting our courtesy Firewise home assessments for those people that request them. The Firewise money has run out to offer the fuels removal grants. So that program is no longer continuing, but we will continue to provide the homeowners with the Firewise assessments that want them. We've just completed several weeks of wildland fire tactics, drills, training, and safety refresher instruction for all of our line firefighters. That says USS, it's supposed to be UAA. UAA, the ICER evacuation study is ongoing. This was funded by a appropriation from the state legislature, Senator Josh Revak, a couple of years ago, funneled through the municipality. It's being managed by the fire department. And this is funding evacuation studies for the hillside. And then the woodlots. Everybody wants to know about the woodlots. Of course, in previous years, we've received concerns that we start the woodlots up too late in the summer, and so it's a legitimate complaint. But the problem is the same lots that are our woodlots are also our snow dumps. So we have to wait for the snow to melt before we can really have a place to conduct the woodlots. We will be doing it differently this year. On the encouragement and direction from Mayor Bronson, we are looking for a way to provide the fuels removal to the homeowners so that it's not at any expense to the homeowners. And so what we have is purchasing is working on issuing an invitation to bid for contractors that will manage this service for us this summer in Girdwood, South Anchorage, and up at Highland Road. And this will be, our vision is that this would be paid for, reimbursed by the federal grant that we're expecting to receive. So any questions before I move on to our second?
Yeah, I have a question from Mr. Salt.
Thank you. Through the chair, great presentation, but I get a lot of comments or concerns from citizens about homeless camps, the potential for fire on hillside. Is any of this directed or any mitigations around the potential for homeless camps to have a fire that might get out of control?
Thank you, Assembly Member Salt, through the chair. That is a good question. I did appreciate the correspondence from you on this topic. These efforts aren't specifically focused on the issue of fires that are related to the homeless encampments around town. We are very aware of those camps. Parks and Rec, along with, to my knowledge, APD does do, well, they're not doing abatement anymore, but Parks and Rec is doing cleanup around the camps. Along with that, there's an education campaign. And the homeless encampments do present a risk of wildfire in the more urban parts of our town. We're fortunate in that the risk of a fire escapement in any large scale is pretty small. But there are homes and infrastructure that could be in the path of a local wildfire. I'm pretty confident in our efforts to be able to jump on a fire of that size and keep them small. And we're also very quick to bring in DOF and JBER anytime such a fire erupts.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have several people in the queue at this point. Next, Ms. Sprawley.
Yeah, and I don't know if you would be the right ones to answer this question, but in terms of spruce bark beetle, I know that's, a big reason why we have so many dead trees around town. I know West Anchorage, there's certainly a lot of mature trees that have been lost on public and private property. Do you have any update? Because I know that species kind of moves in waves. Do we think we're toward the end of this, or is there any kind of information? I've heard they're generally moving further south, but just curious what you found.
Thank you for that question, Assemblymember Brawley, through the chair. The answer is no, I don't really know about that. I know that BLM has, and DOF, they both have fuel specialists that are looking at this issue, but I'm unfamiliar with their findings.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Martinez.
Thank you. Through the chair, I have just 3 quick questions. First, how do communities get connected to the resources you outlined in the outreach section of your presentation? Are those community councils or organizations reaching out to you all, or is there a proactive outreach from the department to spaces or community councils that you already have on your radar as with those concerns?
Thank you for that question, Assemblymember Martinez, through the chair. I think that we look to OAM and Amanda will be up here shortly, but OAM has been much more proactive in their outreach than we have been able to be. We do have plans to stand up a public information office in the fire department, but it's not in place yet. One of the frustrations that have been expressed with us is that when an emergency occurs, such as a wildfire, that it's at a time when public information is needed the most, and it's when we're least able to provide it because our officers are involved in the event. And so we do rely heavily on OEM, and I think they have a pretty good outreach strategy. The community councils are a very good way to connect with the fire department. We've been very strongly encouraging all of our officers in each of our areas to become involved with and attend their community council meetings. And that's a great avenue of connection.
Thank you. And just to flag on that, when there was the fire on Elmore last year that caused a chain reaction that led to displacement of folks in Centennial, people in Basher and Stuck Again Heights, which is not on these outreach lists, were also very, very concerned with the same sort of issues like the hillside. So I just wanted to flag that there. My second question was, how many years is that $4 million grant? Is that a 1-year grant? Is that a multiple-year grant?
Thank you for that question through the chair. It's $4 million over 5 years, and there's no required match.
Thank you. And then my final question is there a plan to go for a new grant for the Firewise program, which is a phenomenal program, and as you saw that grant program is discontinued, but is there a plan to go for a new grant to fill that in, or to pick that work up in a different direction? Thank you.
Yes, also through the chair, that the Firewise grant was pass-through money that we received from the state. We have been in active conversations with the Division of Forestry. They do have funding available for other wildfire prevention and mitigation initiatives that don't include Firewise, but we're talking with them about fuels removal, chipper services, and things that they might be able to assist us with. Firewise is not one of them, but I think if we look at the total package of initiatives that could be funded, I think they're quite adequate.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Constant, then Mr. Johnson.
I'm going to go ahead and pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, real quick, and sorry, you might have already answered this. The fuels mitigation grant for $1.2 million, do you anticipate being able to deploy those funds this year, or at least some of them?
Thank you, Assemblymember Johnson, through the chair. I really have no idea, and Amanda is shaking her head also. So I think the answer is no, we don't know.
Thank you. Ms. Branca?
So a question I had, the UAA ICER evacuation study, is Basher being looked at? I know they're very concerned about an evacuation route off Campbell Airstrip Road, Basher.
Thank you, Assemblymember Branca, through the chair. Yes, I'm not intimately familiar with her research. This is Jen Schmidt, Dr. Jen Schmidt with UAA. But I've seen some risk maps that she has developed that encompass the Eagle River area and the Basher area, Stuckagin Heights. So I'm comfortable saying yes, that those are being considered as well.
And then one more question I had is, I've noticed that I have property on the Kenai, and we're all pretty aware of what to do with a tree that you take down that has spruce bark beetle. You know, you wrap it. And in Anchorage, I'm noticing that when trees are taken down, neighbors are collecting all that wood in their yard, which I feel like is going to just exacerbate this situation with spruce bark beetle, and maybe more education in town. I don't know if you would be the person that would coordinate that, but definitely having these piles of spruce bark beetle trees in yards is not a good plan.
Thank you. I have really nothing to offer to that. It is a good suggestion. One of the challenges that we face, of course, is the area we're trying to protect is a patchwork of federal, state, municipal, and private lands. And of course, we can't compel people to do much on their own property. But that introduces a real challenge for us. And fortunately, we have a lot of people in those agencies that are willing to coordinate. I have taken note of your concerns, and I will share those with the people that are doing the fuel removal. Maybe there's something we can do.
Thanks. One more in the queue, and then I'd like to move forward. Mr. Boland?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if you have a dead spruce tree in your yard, cut it down, get rid of it. But the other thing folks should know about is that the Anchorage Audubon Society has a program where they're giving away 10,000 white spruce seedlings for free. So they're looking to connect with community councils or other groups to help them distribute that. So that would be a great maybe incentive for folks to get rid of their dead trees and to replace them with healthy young seedlings. And the younger trees are more resistant to spruce bark beetle kill. Thanks. Oh, you can get more information at mrwhitekeys.com/trees.html.
Thank you, Mr. Boland. Okay, one more item. You're just going to do a quick update on PFAS, right?
Yes, I can move quickly. So there was a first quarter budget revision that this body passed that would provide funding for us to equip our firefighters with emergency medical services clothing. And and I was asked to just give a brief update of why that's necessary. The bottom line is that polyfluorinated substances, or PFAS, are compounds that are used in many commercial and retail products, domestic products, and including the turnout clothing that our firefighters wear. But in much higher concentrations in the turnouts, because it's necessary in order for the garment to achieve the desired level of heat protection and the ability to allow vapors to escape. So keep steam out and allow body vapors to escape. And so they rely on a very high concentration of PFAS in these garments. And what has been found is that firefighters are starting to find PFAS in the organs of firefighters' kidneys, spleen, and so forth. And the risk, the causality to cancer in firefighters has not been established, but we have to assume that it's not zero. So if we could just move to the next slide. What we're doing is, with this funding, is we will purchase alternative clothing that right now our firefighters, when they're assigned to working on an ambulance, they wear the turnout clothing because it provides a barrier to bloodborne pathogens and all sorts of other communicable diseases that they might be exposed to. But at the same time exposing them to the PFAS. So the funding will be used to buy a different garment that will provide the same protection, but none of the risk. In addition to that, we are, really trying to decide what we're going to do about these turnouts that everybody has is required to do our job. There are no suitable alternatives really that would provide firefighting protection yet. The manufacturers are working on it. But we're right now exploring a variety of operational things, such as prohibiting the discretionary use of our turnouts for public events, such as the Fur-Rondi sled dog races, when we get out there and hold the dogs and fill the boot and things like that. Maybe refraining from putting on the turnouts for our emergency fire calls that we go to, limiting their use in training, putting some rules around transporting turnout clothing in our trucks and our vehicles, including the fire trucks that are being spec'd out right now for purchase. We're very seriously considering a concept that would move all that turnout gear into outside compartments so that they wouldn't be in the same passenger compartment. It's a controversial move that has operational impacts, but it's something that we are exploring. And then simple things like having our firefighters wear long-sleeved shirts and trousers. So that's all I have to present on this. I did want to, with the indulgence of the chair, address a question that Assemblymember Cross brought up last month about casualties relating to people being in the cold. And I'm going to turn to Chief Lewis to address those. And we have your visuals up there.
I think this is dead as well. Thank you. So Member Cross, you inquired about our outside deaths that we perceived as homeless. And so what we did was we looked at our data using anyone that through a manual review was perceived as not having a home, that either was found dead beyond resuscitation efforts or that we tried to attempt as resuscitation, either got it or transported and they terminated the hospital. I also included in that patients who were suffering from severe hypothermia or frostbite. And you can see on this map, which probably doesn't show up very great for you, I compared the winter of 2021 and 22 to the winter of 2022 and 23. Plotted in there, the red are those found in cardiac arrest and the blue are severe hypothermia and frostbite. And the Anchorage is cut off because there were no incidents outside of what the areas that I cut off. And that's 21, 22. And if you slide forward, there's 22 and 23. There was an increase in the number in both cases. Of course, 22 and 23 was a pretty severe winter as far as winters in Anchorage go. I can certainly take any questions.
Doesn't appear to have any questions. Thank you so much. Oh,
I'll just follow up.
okay, go ahead, Mr.
No, I
Cross.
really appreciate that. This is important information that we'll pass off to the Homeless and Housing Committee. I know that they're intending to strategically plan some outreach, which we expanded funding for. And so I think these numbers will be important as far as we develop a plan for our outreach program of identifying those hot spots. That was the intention here, is looking for those areas and have primary and secondary focuses. I think instinctively we knew, but I think we just want to make sure that we solidify that with actual data. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Brawley.
Yeah, thank you. Just a comment and a reminder that my understanding is part of the reason why we have a city-owned, privately operated shelter at Brother Francis was back in the 1980s. There were several outdoor deaths from people experiencing homelessness. And so the community decided that was unacceptable and that we needed to have better solutions. So I think this is just a good reminder of why we have those things and why they're important. So thank you for this data.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. I think we're going to move on to our next section. Monica, are you ready? Great. All right, you have the floor. You want to introduce yourself for our new members?
Hello, my name is Monica Elkington. I'm the acting municipal prosecutor for the municipality of Anchorage. And I wanted to give a little bit of background on what the municipal prosecutor's office does. I know we have several new members, and maybe a month ago or a couple months ago, I gave a PowerPoint explaining kind of the caseload of the municipal prosecutor's office, and I don't want to give that today, but I might send it to you all if you're interested. And but basically, there are 3 levels of prosecution here in the municipality of Anchorage. There's the federal court that takes care of federal crimes. Then there's the state court, which is in terms of crime level, they handle the felonies inside the municipality of Anchorage, and they coordinate with district attorneys' offices around the state. And then we here at the municipality, our offices in City Hall, we handle the misdemeanors that are prosecuted here. If there's a misdemeanor and a felony together, like for instance, if somebody is shoplifting and they push a loss prevention officer and the shoplifting amount is above a certain amount, then that might go to the state, even though it's a misdemeanor. But for the most part, all the misdemeanors inside the boundaries of Anchorage are prosecuted by the municipal prosecutor's office. And that hasn't always been the case. It changed about 7 years ago. And that's when our office in prosecution about doubled in size or tripled in size. We have 2 main sections. We have a domestic violence section, and I'm acting prosecutor, but I'm also deputy over the domestic violence section, which is the job I thought I was doing before our prosecutor left. And we handle thousands of domestic violence cases in Anchorage a year. The total cases prosecuted that our office handles is about 5,000 to 8,000 a year of both sections. But the domestic violence section, we handle minor injuries. So it's nothing that is a serious physical injury or a prolonged injury. But we do deal with many, kind of black eyes and bruising from domestic violence. And we work closely with the victims in those cases. And then we also handle other crimes of domestic violence like criminal mischief, breaking somebody's stuff, violations of restraining orders. And our view here at the municipality is that if we can intervene in these families and stop this violence and stop the cycle, then it won't become felony level. So so that's our domestic violence side. Then our general trial side handles first and second DUIs in the municipality. So all of the DUIs, if somebody have one prior DUI or has no prior DUIs, we're handling those as well. A third DUI within 10 years is a felony, so that goes to the state. And also a third assault, no matter what the level, goes to the state as well. So we have thousands of cases, all different kinds of cases. A great deal of the kind of cases that we handle are shoplifting, trespass, kind of the type of case that business owners might contact you all about, and we hear about as well. So where the victim, there might not be just one citizen victim. It's a victim is the store, and not just even the store owner and the store's customers and as these costs are passed on to the public. So I just kind of wanted to give a little bit of background about that. And right now the position of municipal prosecutor is vacant, and I'm one of 2 deputies, and the other deputy is vacant as well. So I'm in my acting capacity, and I've been there since about September of 2022. I also wanted to just give an update in terms of body-worn cameras. I know this committee heard about body-worn cameras from APD earlier. From the prosecution side, we deal with now, currently, audio recording in virtually every case, audio of the defendant and talking to the police officers, audio of the witnesses, and we also deal with in-car video in many of our cases. Not every single case has in-car video that has evidentiary value, but we get that data the audio recordings that are related to that case and the video recordings that are related to that case and digital photos. So we handle those in virtually every case. We have that kind of digital evidence, and we've been dealing with that for a long time. So we handle that data and that data migration from APD to us. And then it's a constitutional requirement that we also provide it to the defense and that the defense is able to look at it. So we do that pretty easily and many times a day. But in terms of video footage that's about to come online, we have been cooperating with APD and I was able to attend some of the demonstrations of the vendors, and we are a part of the discussion about how the video footage that has evidentiary value is going to get to prosecution and then get to the defense, because that is very important. I think many voters, when they passed the body-worn cameras, when they voted for it, they were thinking of this is going to protect the citizens from officer misconduct. And you know, I think that's accurate. But I think most citizens also did not realize that in virtually every call that the officers take, they're going to have body-worn camera footage, and that's going to be evidence of a crime. And that's going to be video footage of a crying victim, video footage of injuries on the victim, video footage of somebody speeds down the road that's currently on the in-car video system. And all of that is, you know, I expect that 99% of the cases and of the footage that we receive is going to be evidence in prosecution, evidence of crimes and of criminal investigations. So that's just, it's something to keep in mind that I think we are definitely keeping it in mind in terms of the evidentiary value of this. But, you know, most of the footage that's going to be out there is not going to be officer-involved shootings. It's going to be the police officers talking to witnesses of crimes, talking to victims of crimes, and then we're going to use that in court as evidence. So when we think of body-worn cameras, that's just something that we have a keen awareness of. And we also have an awareness of in prosecution of what the technological needs are. I think my phone is ringing. I'm going to turn it off. To get that data. And so we have, you know, like I said, we deal with audio and photos and some video footage already, but we have a lot of video footage that is yet to come. So, and we aren't entirely sure what the technological needs will be in our office. We expect that there may be some increased needs for labor and some increased needs for software, hardware, that kind of stuff. We don't have details on that yet. And until we have more information about the vendor and about what exactly, you know, what are these, how big are these files going to be? How many hours are going to be on one file? That kind of thing, then we don't have details yet. But we are working on it, and we're in close contact with APD and our IT departments on that situation.
You can just pause for one moment. I have a question for you, and then I have a statement as well. Dean?
Yes, thank you. I just had a question, and just, I guess, more for clarification for everybody listening about our criminal justice system and its fairness in courts. And you mentioned how video evidence, body-worn cameras, and other data is often used 99% in prosecution of crimes. But I just wanted to be sure that those are also evidence collected by police government that's disclosable to the defense, right, to the defendant's attorney, and maybe part of Brady disclosures. And is that how that works, correct?
Yeah, so our obligations under Brady are, there's that, and then there's also our discovery obligations to give to the defense attorneys. And so when a case goes to trial, the defense attorney has to have had the same evidence so that they know what's coming. It doesn't mean that the evidence is going to the criminal defendant. And there's rules about what the attorney can provide to their client. So for instance, if you commit a crime, or if you are reporting a crime and you say, I live at this address and I live at this, here's my phone number so I can be reached to know when to come in and testify, that contact information is not necessarily going to the criminal. And usually there's rules that say it can't go to the criminal. But we have obligations to give the evidence in crimes to the defense so that they can evaluate the strength of their case. And ultimately what that what that means is that most of our cases resolve in plea bargains because the defense attorneys review the evidence against their client, and most of our cases do resolve short of jury trial.
Thank you. So I'd like to just reinforce a point that I've made more times than I think I need to, and that is that your statement that it's likely that we will need to increase the infrastructure. I appreciate that. From what I've understood at this point, it's not likely. We will. There will be costs associated with ensuring that we have the infrastructure within the law department to be able to process this information in the way that we do. And so I just want to sort of reemphasize this point to two things. One is that if we know that's coming, we need to prepare for it so that we don't have further delays. And earlier we had a conversation about the timeline for the implementation of the body cameras. And I as much as I think we all appreciate the what sounds like we're going to move forward, we're going to use the policy we have in place. We're ordering the equipment, we're doing the training, we're going to move it in place. All that is for naught if we cannot use the information. And so my sense is that there is likely a leading contender for the vendors. We don't need to know who that is, but I think you guys know who that is. And it seems to me that it would be in your best interest to begin to research what that would mean now.
Yep.
And so once the contract is finished, you're ready to come forward and say, we know who the vendor is, we know what the costs are going to be for the infrastructure, and we're ready to bring that to you. And I guess the slight frustration that I have is that it's not honestly not our job to come to you and to say you need to make sure that you're thinking about infrastructure. It's your job to come to us and say, heads up, this is coming.
Yep.
And we're going to bring it to you as soon as we possibly can to make sure there's no delays.
Yes.
And so I feel like that this is something that we keep bringing up in this meeting, but we're not getting anything back. We're not getting anything back that yes, we're on it, we got it. We're talking between the departments, and as soon as we possibly can, we will be bringing that forward. So I just wanted to again put a pin in that. I know that Ms. Heltzer heard me say this the last time, and so my concern is no further delays and that we move forward as quickly as we can. Okay, nothing else on body cameras I see. Let's go ahead and move to the next, your next point, which is the bail schedule.
Sure. So the reason why I asked for us to address this, so when COVID first started, the Alaska Supreme Court issued an order saying, effectively, consider the fact that if defendants are being arrested all over the state, and it wasn't just Anchorage, it was all over the state, they may have COVID. And for a while, there was no COVID in the jails. And then people started getting arrested who were positive for COVID. And then there was COVID in the jails. And then the Department of Corrections had to take some measures to protect the inmates that were already in there. And so the Supreme Court said, consider the prevalence of COVID in the jails when setting bail. And so what that means, when somebody gets arrested, the judge had to consider the prevalence of COVID in the jail, whether that person gets bailed out that same day or whether that person stays in jail for longer until their next court date. And so what that resulted in is a lot of defendants having lower bail or having reduced bail or being out on the street for their bail when it wasn't previously the case. There's also been a change in a case law from Alaska based on nationwide, but specifically in Alaska, saying we need to consider whether somebody can afford the bail. So if somebody is arrested and their bail is $500 and they are an unhoused individual and $500 is not within the realm of something that they can afford, the courts have said you have to also consider that. So what that has resulted in over the past few years is fewer people being held in jail on bail, more people being let out on the street. Then the bail schedule is kind of a document that is promulgated by the courts that says, here's what the default bail is for certain crimes. Some crimes, like a crime of domestic violence, there's no default bail. They have to go in front of a judge. The judge has to set their conditions, and their conditions have to include no contact with the victim to protect the victim. Other kinds of cases, up until recently, the default has been no cash bail, let them back out on the street, but they have to stay away from, Abbott Cars was one of the ones I handled this morning, or other places, a specific place, or other conditions too. But that's an example. And recently, the courts have changed their bail schedule to change the default, what the bail is, to make it more, to increase the cash amount and to say, we're no longer considering the prevalence of COVID in the jail. That's not really relevant anymore. And so the judges still have to consider whether the defendant can pay, but the default amount for a number of crimes has increased significantly. So that means that more people are being arrested and they're staying in jail overnight. And then the following day, a judge is addressing their bail. And so from the prosecutor's office, what that means is a month ago, we would have maybe 5 to 8 new cases per day of people who were arrested the previous night and were still in jail the following day in Anchorage. Now we're in the 10 to 20 range, and some days are closer to 20. So that has, on the one hand, increased the amount of people that have gotten off the street, and not have been released immediately. On the other hand, it's been increased workload in our office as well. So that's something that has changed, that the courts have changed. Basically, as COVID has ended, they've said, okay, well, we can hold more people now. But it has increased what we are doing because those people all need to be addressed at court the following day because they have a right to appear in court within 24 hours.
Thanks. Yeah. Thank you for that update. That was really important. And seeing no questions, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Amanda. So our final section for the day is Office of Emergency Management. You got 20 if you need it. 15 maybe it would be ideal. Yeah.
Hi, good afternoon. Is this on?
We'll push the button, see if it works. There you go.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amanda Loach. I'm the director of the Anchorage Office of Emergency Management. I'm glad to be here with each of you and our public safety partners. Since this is the first time for some committee members, we've been asked to take a few moments to introduce a high-level overview of our disaster resilience work. For our community long-term benefit, we like to do this before we have a disaster. I'll also give you some to-dos to join in on practical applications of our disaster process by sharing citywide preparedness activities coming up this season. So let's start with a comparison of how we often explain our work. Day-to-day is a blue sky day versus a disaster that's weather-filled and a gray sky day. A question that we always get as well is what's the difference between the Office of Emergency Management and the Emergency Operations Center, also known as the EOC? They're two very different things. When we are the Office of Emergency Management, it's a blue sky day. It's a small but mighty growing municipal office of 7.5 employees. During Blue Sky, we're focused on preparedness, which includes updating plans, training responders, and doing exercises to validate plans. Slide. Our mission is to support the municipality of Anchorage by coordinating the preparation for, response to, and mitigation against and recovery from all hazard, emergencies, and disasters. Slide. The vision for Anchorage is a more disaster resilient community centered around a capable Office of Emergency Management supporting people of all ages, backgrounds, and cultures. Slide. Our 3 goals are build a culture of preparedness in the municipality, ready the municipality for disasters, and expedite disaster recovery and enhance mitigation against future disasters. Slide. So in gray skies, after a disaster hits, the fire department, police department, or any other municipal department may become overwhelmed and request the opening of the Emergency Operations Center. The Office of Emergency Management stands up the EOC with the help of community partners. The EOC is a facility with systems that we activate and right-size to coordinate response support. Our Office of Emergency Management staff is absorbed by the EOC when the EOC is activated. Community subject matter experts go to work where they're needed. The primary role of the EOC is to support field responders in command and control. We do not take over the response. We support field responders, assess the community for secondary impacts, and pass that information on to all of you. As needed, the EOC can organize to manage an incident in a very large response, such as during COVID-19, where the EOC was active and in command and control for 576 days. Slide. OEM has evolved. Since the 2018 Point McKenzie earthquake, the MOA had 2 federally declared emergencies, 2 state declared emergencies, and 3 locally declared emergencies. Due to this, the staff has grown to 7.5 because of our increased work following disasters and an increase of grant funds to the office. We have 2 staff for disaster recovery, 3 emergency managers, myself, a finance administrator, and an intern to build the future of our team. We do expect to continue growing for a few years as we seek additional resources. Slide. Okay, so the life cycle. I'm going to try to be brief here for you guys. So what does this process look like over time? We participate in emergency or disaster life cycle, including response, preparedness, mitigation, and recovery. Preparedness is what we do with many partners to create a response, to get ready for a response before the disaster. We have the Anchorage Local Emergency Planning Committee. We have the Municipality Comprehensive Emergency Operations Plan. We have a 3-year integrated plan, which sets out our planning, training, and exercise priorities and closes the gaps that we have in capabilities locally. And then we implement the National Incident Management System, so we learn our lessons and improve for the future. Slide. So mitigation is the good fight. It's what we do to completely eliminate or significantly reduce impacts of threats. Examples are seismic retrofits, floodplain management, flood proofing, risk analysis, and we have a language access project going, which updates our website and creates standard warning messages and preparedness information to the public in commonly spoken languages. We also have a FEMA and Assembly approved MOA all hazard mitigation plan. Slide, please. Disasters start local and end local, right here in neighborhoods, usually with lights and sirens. Incident commanders are assigned and in charge of the disaster until authority is transferred to another qualified individual. Command always remains local. At OEM and the EOC, we support field command with 24/7, 365 coverage, either through an EOC activation or a duty officer. We have physical, hybrid, and remote EOC with a formal process for incident action planning. Our EOC has an emergency response team with over 100 people named to help us, and we're always recruiting talent from within MOA departments and partner organizations. Slide. Last but certainly not least, recovery. This is infrastructure restoration and support for individuals and families and mitigation. Recovery is faster, the faster we respond. But despite our best efforts, it can sometimes take decades to recover. A few notes on this. Recovery begins during the response. We have 4 declared disasters, which we're continuing recovering right now. Slide. So how can you help? Amplify the OEM messaging on social media. Send people to communication resources they may need, referring to the emergency status section on our website. Ask questions. If you have questions as to what to do or how we can help, just ask. We will try to keep it pointed. However, we love what we do and may get a little more excited than you're used to. Come by for a visit at the EOC. We appreciate being able to show off our hard work before a disaster. Coordinate public information regarding preparedness, response, mitigation, and recovery with our office. Incident command system teaches us that everyone has a role, and if done correctly, the incident can run smoothly. When people step out of their lane, things can get very confusing. We ask that you let professionals command the response and help with creating boundaries during a response. So now I want to talk a little bit about this season's work with preparedness and refer back to what Chief Schrage was talking to you about in the wildfire preparedness. Look, we're lucky to have him as a champion for wildfire. Those hillside programs that you see going on both April 25th and on May the 6th, I want to make sure credit is given to the community councils for those initiatives. It's really important that it said OEM next to it, but it's really the community councils that are doing that grassroots effort, and the hillside community councils and those other councils that you mentioned are all participating and leading those efforts. We're just along for the ride, and that's where most of the work's getting done. We also have an outreach day planned at Bear Valley. We're also going to receive our Storm Ready initiative from the Weather Service on that day. So AFD will be there. Happy to have more of you if you're available. Coming up, we have nationally approved curriculum, which you're welcome to attend. In training in July, we have July 25th and 26th critical infrastructure resilience training, which we'd love to have your participation in. The Anchorage School District is bringing up policy level leadership training in August 10th and 11th, senior official workshops and crisis leadership. So we'd love to have you there as well. As far as exercises go, everyone loves exercises. We do have a medical surge tabletop exercise that we're working with the health department and state and local medical partners on May 9th. And then beginning this month, we will design a multi-jurisdictional exercise that will occur in April 2024. Questions?
Thank you for your presentation. Members, do you have questions? I have one as they think about. You mentioned the Anchorage School District. Can you talk to me about the relationship that you have with the Anchorage School District as it relates to sort of active shooter response? And is that APD, or is there a role that you have in terms of preparing schools for that?
Yeah, we work with the Anchorage School District Emergency Management and Security on a regular basis. We have meetings with them on a regular basis. Of course, they have a really co-located relationship with the police department. As far as active shooter goes, that is primarily a protective type hazard, and we would end up dealing with things afterwards. A lot of things that would come afterwards.
Great. Well, thank you for your presentation. Doesn't look like we have questions at this point. So appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. There is, I think our folks from APD may have left, but there is one other item on our agenda that came up because of some questions related to fentanyl overdoses. I don't know if Chief Schrage, if you feel like that's something that you can address But I think we wanted to give members an opportunity to talk about what's going on in our community and what kind of a response we're providing. So I don't want to put you on the spot, but if from your department, if there's anything that you can share that would be helpful, then we can certainly bring Chief Curl back for our next meeting to address it.
Thank you. Doug Schrage again. Oh, come on. And joined by Chief Lewis as well. We do have some information on this. I was just scanning the report that I just received just a couple of moments ago. So I'm not really prepared to go into a lot of details, but qualitatively, the report says that the delivery of naloxone or Narcan by non-EMS personnel is up. I think he uses the word significantly. Can you expand on that? Do you have that?
Sure. So the way we would view fentanyl overdoses would be our administration of Narcan or report that it was used by the public. We don't typically know what substance someone took when we arrive, right? So we run, biosurveillance over reporting. And so there has been an uptick in public Narcan use over the past 6 months. The last 2 months, almost double what it was 6 months ago. I don't know if that's because we have more of these kits out there now, and they're just more available because you can get them now over the counter. That's probably the case, or if there's more of it in the community. As far as our own service use, that seems to be steady, actually maybe a little bit declined, probably because of the public use intervention before we arrive. And I don't have a good sense of how often APD has used it now that they're carrying it as well, which may play a factor.
Okay, that's something I think. I mean, I'm not sure of other members, but I certainly would like to explore further. It's been on the news a great deal, and I know within our schools there are presentations being made around fentanyl, and so it's creating a great deal of public concern. And I'd like to be able to share out with the public and with all of us our collective response to that. So I guess I would just ask your advice as to who should be here to talk about this with us, and what information do we need, and where can we find it? I'm thinking about the different departments and where this falls. Does it squarely fall at APD as a combination effort between your two departments? Who do you think we need to invite and so that we can get a real sense of what the situation is and how to respond to it?
Could you be a little more specific about which question we're trying to address? I heard you say outreach regarding the use of naloxone.
So specifically, I guess I'm reacting to a fair amount of media and an uptick in conversations around fentanyl overdoses in our community, and so I'm curious. One, is that true? And where is that in the information so that we can actually understand it? What you're saying is that the use of Narcan isn't necessarily directly related to fentanyl, so that's not necessarily a one-to-one relationship. So I'm trying to explore, and we can take this conversation offline so we can decide how we want to proceed. But that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in understanding if there is a current uptick in fentanyl overdoses in our community now, why, and what we're doing about it as a city.
Yes, thank you for the clarification. I mean, we are tracking these statistics as they relate to our interventions with the public. And so in that way, it's sort of a window in what's happening in the community. But we aren't specifically collecting these data to identify what the community problems are. So with that in mind, maybe it might be the health department, maybe even the state. That's something we could probably explore.
Okay.
If I may, I just would like to emphasize the importance of people who are confronted with a situation involving the possible use of Narcan, that if CPR is indicated, that comes first. There's nothing that you can do with Narcan that will restore somebody's beating heart or breathing. So CPR first, and then Narcan. Our medical director has raised concerns that the increase in use in Narcan may result in an increase in or a reduction in our survivability from cardiac arrest because of that.
Thank you, Chief. I don't see any members with questions or comments. Thank you for coming back up. Appreciate it. We have a few minutes left for public comment. Is there anyone on the phone or in the audience who would like to come up and provide public testimony? Sir, yes. Can we get him a microphone? Thank you. And sir, if you could state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, my name is Skylar Kingstring, and I'm not really making a comment. I was more just asking for maybe, I know that you guys don't usually respond to these immediately, but I've been curious with the body camera policy or with the body camera proposition that was approved. On the language of it, it said that it would increase the municipal tax cap, generating an estimated $1.84 million per year. I assume that went into effect immediately. That was also meant to provide for the infrastructure surrounding the body cameras. The reason that number was approved was specifically for the body cameras, but also for data storage, software, et cetera. I was wondering if there's any sort of accountability for where that money has gone in the last couple of years. And if so, where can the public find it? I've been asked that question a lot by members of the organizations that I work for, and I just would like to be able to have better answers for that.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. And I'm happy to check with you after the meeting and follow up with you.
Did I introduce? I did introduce myself, right?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Yep. Thanks for your testimony. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to speak at this time? Do we have anybody on the phone at this point? No. Okay, great. Seeing no other members with comments or questions, thank you all for being here today. This meeting is adjourned.